Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. In exactly a year's time, India will be slap bang in the middle of the 2024 national elections. And that leads to a critical question. What is the best strategy for the Congress party to adopt to maximize its prospects? Joining me now to share his personal opinion is one of the party's most senior and most thoughtful MPs, former Information and Broadcasting Minister, Manish Tewari. Manish Tewari, let me start with a simple question. What do you personally believe should be the aim of the Congress party when it fights the 2024 elections? To deny BJP 272 seats and thus ensure the BJP can't form a government, or to maximize the number of seats Congress wins? Which of the two?
First of all, Karan, thank you very much for inviting me again for this conversation. To answer your question straight off the bat, I think this country requires a change. And the reason why it requires a change is because 10 years is a very long time to try out a dispensation. And if in democracy there are not periodic changes, then I think democracy loses its essence. So under those circumstances, the answer is very simple. Everything that needs to be done in order to bring about a change should be done. And if that means even taking a step back and allowing other forces or other political players in order to maximize gains where our footprint is light, I think that should be done.
So the priority is to ensure the BJP doesn't form another government.
The objective would be to give India an alternative government.
Okay, we're saying the same thing but in different language. Now, many people would agree that the best way of ensuring the BJP is defeated and can't form another government is to put up a 1-to-1 fight against the BJP in the maximum number of constituencies. In other words, ensure that the 60% of the Indian voter that votes for the opposition, that vote is not split by multiple candidates. Would you accept that logic?
I think this has been a conundrum going back to the days when the Congress used to be the dominant party and you had a number of small regional political parties. I'm talking about the 70s and the 80s. So what is called the index of opposition unity has always been the eternal conundrum in Indian politics. As I look at it, I don't see a national alliance. I do not see the opposition coming together at the national level as they did in 1977. But that does not rule out what is far more potent, state-by-state alliances. So therefore, you can achieve the matchstick upon matchstick fight by actually getting into alliances and arrangements state-wise, which will actually ensure the same result. So therefore, rather than trying to come together at the national level, which becomes a little unwieldy because then you need a common minimum program, you require various other ideological postulates to be reconciled, it is much easier to have this tactical understanding which will bring about or which can bring about the same result.
So just again to clarify, you're saying that you can't forge a party like the Janata Party that defeated Congress in 77 because coming together to form a party will be difficult. But what you can do is to forge a series of state-wise alliances so that you have, as you put it, match-to-match fights with the BJP. And by match-to-match fights, you mean one-to-one fights. You don't splinter the opposition vote.
In fact, if you were to rewind back to 77, despite the opposition coming together, the Congress still won about 156 seats, if I recall correctly from the top of my head. The reason why I am bringing this up again is primarily because in 77, the Congress had a national footprint. The BJP doesn't have a national footprint of the kind the Congress had even today. For example, if you look at Kerala, where is the BJP in Kerala? You look at Tamil Nadu, where is the BJP in Tamil Nadu?
I take your point completely.
So therefore, under those circumstances, I think where you are fighting the BJP, you need to have these tactical understandings. But where you're fighting each other, for example, in Kerala, if the left and the Congress are fighting each other, well, I think that is kosher as long as...
Because you're both on the same side.
Yes.
Let me explore your thinking a little further. We're not saying that the answer lies in forging what you call tactical alliances, and let's say in the first instance between Congress and parties that are dominant in states like Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Telangana, Orissa. Do you have a formula on the basis of which such tactical alliances can be forged? Any thoughts on that?
The formula is very simple, that democracy requires a periodic change of government. And so therefore, for Indian democracy to be able to flourish and blossom and not become the victim of a one-party tutelage, I think that provides the common minimum basis that for an understanding. Having said that...
Can I interrupt? What you're saying is the basis for an understanding is the shared belief, both by Congress and the people or parties it allies with, that India needs a change. And India will only get the change if we can ally sensibly to form alliances and ensure that it's a one-to-one fight which the BJP loses. That common understanding will be the basis of the alliance.
Absolutely. So therefore, then you don't run into the thicket of reconciling ideological positions. Essentially, you get out of the entire ideological gambit by agreeing on to one fundamental postulate, that democracy periodically requires a change in order to renew and rejuvenate itself.
And that means getting together to defeat the BJP.
That means getting together to ensure that in 2024, India has a different government.
Let's take this one step further. Because Congress is not just the biggest opposition party, but the only national opposition party in the country, why don't you convene a gathering or a meeting of all opposition parties and together analyze the 543 Lok Sabha constituencies? And then, as one of your colleagues, Shashi Tharoor, has told the Indian Express, say to them, we will give way to you in areas where you are clearly stronger than us, and you must give way to us where we are stronger than you. Therefore, you would be able to sit with them and mutually agree, you think you can win this? Okay, I agree, go ahead. I think I can win this, don't contest against me. Why not have that understanding formally with everyone?
Well, frankly, it is not even required because it can be done at the state level. Because the moment you try and do at the national level, you will find that a large number of political parties would be subjected to the tender mercies of law enforcement and intelligence mechanisms. So under those circumstances...
i.e. vendetta and vengeance from the BJP government.
Absolutely. So
but at the state level, you think state presidents of parties can actually negotiate these alliances equally satisfactorily?
Oh, absolutely. It can be done very easily. That is not to say that you need to be intimidated. You know, it can easily be done at the national level by convening, if I can draw a parallel from history, the concert of Europe, like it happened in Vienna in 1815 in a different context. But all that I'm trying to say is that this is not rocket science.
It can be done easily.
It can be done easily. It will only require people, and it's not.
But does it?
It is not only, Karan, and it is not only the Congress and the regional parties. You see, there are situations in certain states where you have a multiplicity of regional parties who do not actually see eye to eye with the dispensation at the center.
You need agreement at that level between them as well.
So I'll give you an example for that. If you look at Punjab. So in Punjab, you have a strange situation whereby the Akali Dal, the Aam Aadmi Party and the Congress, they do not see eye to eye with the dispensation at the center. So essentially,
but is this making the problem insuperable, or are you suggesting that at the state level, by allowing local leaders to sort it out, it can be sorted out? Which is the two?
Well, the question is, of course, it's much easier for local leaders to do it because they know the lay of the land much better. Number two...
But don't they need a direction in each case from the head of their party in Delhi? Otherwise, if they act on their own, what guarantee does the other side they're talking to have that this will be acceptable to Delhi? If all leaders together decide our state levels will sort this out, it can happen.
Well, obviously, it has to be a combination of
both.
the two. But insofar as the mechanics of it is concerned,
the state level is
the
best.
mechanics of that will have to be worked out at the state level. And of course, it will require, as I began by saying, a fundamental understanding that rehorse whatever differences that you have made with the current establishment. Democracy, in order to sustain itself,
needs a change. In fact, I'm coming back to that key point because you made it again. What will ensure that at the state level, the mechanics fall into place and the differences and rivalries that exist don't become barriers is this remembrance that the key thing is a change in government that is essential for our democracy, and that change in government means ensuring the BJP is defeated. That is the common glue that will ensure everything falls in place. I can mix my metaphors.
You're not mixing your metaphors, but I'll give you an example. For example, if you look at Kerala. In Kerala, the Congress and the left have been now fighting each other going back to the early 50s, right? But the Congress and the left have been cooperating and collaborating at the national level. If the push was to ever come to a shove, I am sure that the leadership on either side has the sagacity and the maturity, if the situation was to so demand, to really be able to come to an understanding, because essentially your vision of what India should be is the same.
Essentially, your intention and goal is the same: defeat the BJP. I keep bringing it back to defeat the BJP, but you raised an
interesting... the thing is, let me clarify this. You see, defeating the BJP, Karan, is a negative manifestation.
Okay, changing the government at the center.
Yes,
because it comes to the same thing.
It doesn't come to the same thing. The reason why I say
you won't change the government if Mr. Modi gets a third term.
See, the thing is, it is Mr. Modi now. What I am talking about is something far, far more fundamental, that democracy requires a periodic change to renew itself.
Let me come back to the example you gave, because it's a very good example. Despite your differences, Congress and the left have cooperated at the center and been rivals at the state level, and you've done it successfully, and UPA 1 was a prime example of that. However,
not only
let's not get lost in the detail. There may be many instances that a very different relationship is Congress and Aam Aadmi Party. You don't cooperate in Delhi, you certainly won't cooperate in Punjab. How do you ensure that in that greater interest of democracy needing a change, cooperation happens between the two of you, both in Delhi and Punjab? Because that's essential.
Well, we signed on to a joint petition that went to the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, it never got admitted. And in fact, there lies the answer to your question. There are 14 political parties which signed on to that petition. Each of them being a fierce rival of one or the other at the state level.
Because their interests suited them to be united, and you're saying the same thing will apply here.
I don't think it is about only a convergence of interests. It is about the kind of India that you grew up in and the kind of India that you want your children and grandchildren to grow up in.
Once again, to put it in your language and then in mine, it's essential for democracy there's a change of government, and I'm saying that means it's essential that the BJP doesn't come back for a third term. Let me put this to you, because this is a clear implication of what we're talking about. It suggests to me that maybe perhaps in something like 180 or 200 seats, Congress in states like Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Himachal, Uttarakhand, Goa, maybe even Karnataka, will fight directly with the BJP. But equally importantly, in states like Bengal, Telangana, Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, UP most of all, you'll have to give way to parties that are stronger than you. Is Congress prepared for that?
Well, as I was earlier pointing out, I am in no position to talk about whether the Congress is prepared for it or not prepared for it.
But you're sharing your thinking.
Yeah, but that's for the Congress leadership to really take a call, and I think it is essential to caveat it. But let me answer your question with an Urdu couplet which comes to my mind. The couplet goes as such कि जो दिल लगाने का ढब जानते हैं, जो दिल लगाने का ढब जानते हैं, वो तरकीब वरकीब सब जानते हैं, और जो तरकीब वरकीब सब जानते हैं, वो ना दिल जानते हैं ना ढब जानते हैं. The answer is, once your intent is there, these are mechanics which can easily be worked out.
Where there's a will, there will be a way. In other words, if the intent is common and confirmed, then the compromises necessary will tactically happen.
Absolutely.
Let's then at this point come to a second key issue for the opposition as a whole. And now I'm not talking about Congress any longer. I'm talking about the collective opposition as a whole. Do they need to identify a single leader who in a sense will be their putative prime ministerial figure, or can this tactical series of alliances fight the election in 2024 without an acknowledged leader, relying on state leaders in their individual states and on Congress leaders where Congress is powerful?
It worked in 2004. In 2004, the opposition was facing a formidable leader in the form of late Prime Minister Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. And Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, in many senses of the word, was actually in the old Nehruvian mold. He was more of a unifying figure. But eventually, these understandings, which were actually very embryonic at that point in time, they had not even matured. These understandings ensured that a change happened in 2004.
And it also worked in 77 because actually there was no acknowledged prime ministerial figure in the Janata Party.
Absolutely.
Okay, if it worked then in 77 and 2004, there's absolutely no reason why it can't work again.
See, in democracy, there comes a tipping point. And that inflection point is when people become the opposition. When people start yearning for a change. And unlike Pakistan, where people are invested in street protests, India has invested itself in the ballot box since 1952.
And that popular yearning for change is what this alliance of opposition parties can capitalize and build upon.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, the question is whether India is there or not. And I think that's the critical assessment which has to be made.
In a sense, that assessment will only finally be made when the results of the election
Absolutely.
come out. You'll only know when you do it.
No, Karan, I mean, you've been now a very distinguished journalist for many years. I've spent 4 decades as a political activist. You can always get a sense that there is something which is happening. And the reason why I say that is when I walked in some states in this Bharat Jodo Yatra of Shri Rahul Gandhi, I could sense that restlessness among the people. It's unspoken, unarticulated at the moment, but it is there.
And it needs to be built upon, and you need to be able to facilitate it through the tactical alliances we're talking about. Those alliances will make this restlessness become a vote.
Absolutely.
Let's then come to a third critical feature. And again, I'm talking at the level of the opposition collectively, not Congress on its own. What is the sort of message you need to give the Indian electorate? And before we answer that question, let me put this to you. Would you accept that a personal direct criticism of the Prime Minister is likely to backfire, and a single-minded focus on Adani and crony capitalism hasn't cut much ice with the people so far, and it's unlikely to do so earlier? So those really ought not to be the core message that the opposition gives the country.
Well, you've asked two different sets of questions, and let me deal with it differently. If you recall, in the March of 2020, we did a sit-down interview, I think the last which you and I did for a long time before COVID completely enveloped our lives. I recall that interview got me into a fair amount of turbulence, but there are 5 essential points I had made. That for any political party to succeed, it requires ideological clarity, it requires a narrative, it requires an organization, it requires access to resources, and it requires a leadership. So what was good for the Congress then, and I was talking in the context of the Congress then, is good for the opposition now. And so therefore, a simple message, which I keep coming back to, that in a democracy, change is essential. And so therefore, therefore, I think if you make that your basic message without getting lost in verbiage or in the maze, it would work.
So you're saying the basic message to the people is, in the interest of our democracy and in the interest therefore of our future, a change of government is necessary.
Yes.
Don't get diverted into personally criticizing the Prime Minister. Don't get diverted into issues of crony capitalism, which may not mean very much to people.
Well, you see, on both these, it is far more nuanced than the direct manner in which you put it. And let me explain it to you. Look, crony capitalism is a problem, right? And it does cut ice with a large number of people who see that while they find it extremely difficult to even manage their household budgets, somebody's wealth has exponentially catapulted, over the past 8 or 9 years. So therefore, if you are able to establish that connection, that while you seem to be going down, there are certain people who seem to be going up
Manish
and up.
Tewari, in your cleverness as a politician, you've actually made it a slightly different issue beyond crony capitalism. It's now the comparison between a few who are chosen friends of the government doing exceedingly well and the majority who don't have that favor of friendship remaining poor and perhaps going hungry. In other words, you're converting crony capitalism into something that becomes meaningful for people to understand because of this comparison with their lives.
Well, the fundamental issue in this country, according to me, has always been and will continue to be income and wealth inequality. And as I keep saying, now going back many decades, कि जब पैसा बटे एक समान तभी होगा भारत महान.
But then you're saying something even more important, because I think this is again critical and I'm underlining it. The essential message this collection of opposition alliances have to give the voter is messages that resonate with his or her everyday life.
Oh, absolutely.
It's got to be about employment. It's got to be about health, education, poverty. It's got to be about inflation. Those are things that matter. And the trick, I suppose, will be to ensure that you find the right message for the right state.
Not only that, these 4 or 5 or 6 messages that you outlined are absolutely correct. But, what I have discerned in the Indian people is that they have a very, very robust sense of what is right and what is wrong. And they don't speak about it, they don't articulate it, but they feel it. And somehow...
This is the moral fiber of the Indian people, and you're saying appeal to that.
Yes.
Every Indian instinctively knows what's right or wrong,
That's
what's
right.
good or bad.
That's right.
Awaken that consciousness.
That's right.
But then again, what we're talking about is the need for a political mind that can actually convert the message to a moral message that appeals to people and ensure that at the same time it's conveyed in a way that they feel this affects my life, it affects my children's education, it affects my health, it affects employment. translate things into matters that actually touch on the lives of people, and then they will respond.
I think there are a couple of 1,000 years of institutional wisdom in the opposition. It is not rocket science in order to break the larger message down into smaller parts, which can be easily comprehended by the people.
So you see no problem in doing this at all?
Well, it is, as I said, it all boils down to one thing: intent.
Yep. That lovely Urdu couplet which I translated as, where there's a will, there's a way. The will is there.
Well, in the sense that will have to be actioned, right? Like it was strengthened, irrespective of what the outcome of that petition was. When people came together in order to sign on to that petition, irrespective of whatever may have been their differences on a host of other issues.
If they can do it there, they can do it here. All right, let's move one step further. We've talked about the need for what you call tactical alliances, so that as far as possible, and hopefully almost in every seat, the BJP faces a one-to-one fight. We've talked about leadership and how that absence of
where
leadership,
the BJP matters.
Where the BJP matters. We've also talked about leadership and why you believe you don't need to have a central leader. You've done it in 2004 without one, you can do it again. We've also talked about the messaging, and we've agreed that it has to be in things and in terms of issues that matter to people in their life. However, there is a fourth factor. If you're really going to tackle Modi and the BJP, you also have to be ready to respond what they bring up. And almost certainly if Rahul Gandhi is a candidate, one of the sharpest attacks will be on the person of Rahul Gandhi. So I put it to you, would it not be a blessing in disguise if he can't stand? He'll be out of the way, he won't be a target for them, and you won't have to worry about it.
Well, what's happened to Mr. Rahul Gandhi is extremely unfortunate. And the reason why I say that is because it is not about Rahul Gandhi. It is about the chilling effect that it has on the freedom of speech and expression. You know, Karan, I don't worry so much about Rahul Gandhi as I maybe worry about you. People, when I talk about you, people who live in the public space 24/7. You cannot measure every word that you speak. And there is enough body of law available across jurisprudence and across geographies which says that till the time you do not have the freedom of political expression, democracy is as good as dead. And the manner in which he has been disqualified, those powers actually did not lie with the presiding officers.
I completely agree with the point you're making about Rahul Gandhi and the way he's been disqualified. But what I'm saying is that if Rahul is there as a candidate, he will be the focus of attention and criticism by the BJP, because they will strive to make it a Rahul versus Modi fight. And that is a fight that's very difficult for the opposition to win, which is why I said, unfortunate as the situation may be, it could be a blessing in disguise if he's debarred from standing, because then the easiest of targets that the BJP loves to go for would be missing.
Well, I hope that on the 13th of April, his conviction is stayed and he's back as a member of parliament, because what has happened to him is a complete and absolute reversity. And so therefore, to address your hypothetical scenario, I do not think that even with Shri Rahul Gandhi being there, the discussion that we had earlier gets in any way mitigated in any manner.
Then let me put this to you. If Rahul Gandhi is able to stand, and he is a candidate in 2024, should it not be made crystal clear that he is not the prime ministerial candidate of the opposition alliances or the Congress party?
Well, you're trying to put the cart before the horse, because one thing that you need to keep in mind is that the 3,500 kilometers that he walked across this country, and it's not easy to walk 25 kilometers, day on and day on, right? There is a very different resonance on the ground, which is possibly not manifesting itself. And I think there is enough wisdom in the opposition and there's enough wisdom in the Congress party that where, as I said, you see a convergence of interests for the larger national interest, people will do the right thing at the right time.
Okay, I think you've answered it without doing so explicitly when you said where there's a convergence of interest amongst the opposition
for a larger national
interest, they will do the right thing. And I'm assuming, but I'm putting it to you nonetheless for clarity, that doing the right thing means it will be made politely but fairly firmly clear that the BJP will do the right thing. And I'm assuming, but I'm putting it to you nonetheless for clarity, that doing the right thing means it will be made politely but fairly firmly clear that the BJP will do the right thing. And I'm assuming, but I'm putting it to you nonetheless for clarity, that doing the right thing means it will be made politely but fairly firmly clear Rahul is not the candidate of the opposition for Prime Ministership because there is no candidate at all at the moment. Not that he's ruled out, but there is no candidate. Therefore, it won't become, no matter how hard BJP tries, a Modi versus Rahul fight, because that will deflect everything.
I'm not saying that at all. And the reason I'm not saying that at all is primarily because these are decisions which lie to the remit of the Congress leadership.
Okay.
So ultimately, it is the Congress leadership which has to first take a call, going back to your first question, as to whether their objective would be to bring about a change in 2024 or to maximize the number of seats that the Congress has, which is 52 at the moment, and take it as high as they possibly can. So eventually, depending upon the strategic call which they take, the tactics will play itself out. And I don't think, to the best of my knowledge, that strategic call has yet been taken.
Absolutely. I will then simply repeat what you said earlier, which is, in the greater national interest, a tactical alliance of opposition parties can be relied upon to do the right thing, and we won't spell out what the right thing is, but that certainly gives a hint to the audience, and let's leave it there. Let me then put to you a second problem that could arise in terms of the messaging from the Modi side. And this time perhaps it's directed specifically at your party, Congress. They're going to accuse you of corruption. Already, Congress files which they brought out last week alleges that over 70 years, to use their language, Congress has looted the country of 4.8 lakh crore. That messaging, particularly if you pulled off the tactical alliances, right? And particularly if they've also sensed the restlessness that could convert into votes against them, could become a message they hammer and talk with great ferocity. How will you respond?
Because the message is completely preposterous. It's completely divorced from reality. Tell me all the things which they mention in that quote-unquote Congress files video, which is clearly defamatory for the lack of a better word. Has there been a conviction in any of those cases? The comptroller... No.
But are you saying the country won't believe them? Because that's the important thing.
Yes, because ultimately, whatever allegations you make have to stand in a court of law. Mr. Vinod Rai...
That's only legally. No, we're talking about the court of the people at election.
Well, the court of the people, didn't Mr. Raja get vindicated in the court of the people? Didn't Kanimozi get vindicated in the court of the people? Wasn't this allegation of 1,76,000 crores, the preposterous report which Vinod Rai put out, did it not result in the honorable acquittal of all those people who were wrongly accused in that?
So Congress files and repeated loud charges of Congress corruption by the BJP will not worry you?
Absolutely not, because in the past 8.5 years, in which case has there been a conviction?
Okay. But coming to the end of this interview, and I'm going to once again bring the focus back on your party particularly. I'm no longer talking about the opposition as a whole, I'm talking about your party. You don't have a working committee. It's now being said you won't have one till after the Karnataka elections are out. It's possible it could be postponed even further. Is that a wise decision or is it a mistake?
Frankly, it is not even important. Committees don't win you elections. Yes, in the March of 2020, when we had this conversation and you had 3.5 years to go, or let's say almost 4 years to go before the next election, it is important for the building blocks of an organization.
But no longer.
Now, the only thing which matters is getting your ideological clarity in place, which is, define very precisely what does your secularism mean, what does your nationalism mean, where do you stand on this new feudalism, which is the crony capitalist she-ball model, get your narrative in place, get your tactical alliances in place,
But the absence of a CWC is not a problem.
Well, frankly, I think the Congress has demonstrated by electing a president in the form and shape of Shri Mallikarjun Kharge, who's actually worked his way up over the decades, that the Congress is capable of having a fair and free electoral process playing itself out. And so therefore, now with 1 year to go, I think rather than get lost in the quagmire of committees, it is more important to actually focus our energies on what is critical to win the 2024 sweepstakes.
And that is everything that we've discussed up till now. Then let me put this to you. How much of a setback will it be for the opposition as a whole, not just Congress, if you fail to win Karnataka in May, and if you fail to retain Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh in December?
Well, first of all, the Congress, to the best of my knowledge, is winning Karnataka. And
You're really confident of that?
I'm fairly confident.
This is not bravado.
It's not bravado. I was actually in Thiruvananthapuram just last week in order to do a press conference. And,
Thiruvananthapuram?
Yeah,
I'm talking about Karnataka.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So, therefore, you end up talking to a lot of colleagues who have a fair sense of what is happening in Karnataka. Remember, I've spent a long time in the NSUI and the Youth Congress, so you have colleagues all across. So you get a fair sense of what is happening. And at the moment, as we speak, the Congress definitely has the upper hand in Karnataka. We are still, some months away from Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh.
But you've dealt yourself own blows and own goals there, haven't you?
Well, in the sense that we will cross that bridge when we come to it. But let me caveat all this by saying that in my limited understanding, what matters in a panchayat election does not matter in a block samiti election. What matters in a block samiti election doesn't matter in a Zilla Parishad election. What matters in a Zilla Parishad election doesn't matter in an assembly election. And irrespective of what the assembly election results are, it doesn't matter in a parliament election. Look at Rajasthan. We won Rajasthan.
You can cite the example of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who went early to the polls in 2004 because he'd won Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and lost badly in 2004.
For that matter, what happened to us? Okay. We won Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh.
So what the parliament elections that actually, even though the press will focus on your fortunes in Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh, particularly if they go against you, it doesn't matter, because what happened in 2003-04 is a clear sign that you can lose and still win at the national level.
Or for that matter, what happened in 2019?
Let me then put this to you. Given the very powerful speech she made on March the 26th, which people are still talking about and still praising, should Priyanka Gandhi play a critical campaigning role, not limited to one or two states, but nationwide?
I think that's a very good idea. That speech was actually a very good speech. After a long time, I heard a public articulation which was so extremely poignant. You could see the controlled pain in those words. And I think there is definitely a case that she should be given a larger role as a campaigner
nationwide
across the country.
My last question. Rahul Gandhi seems to have made a habit of personally attacking and criticizing journalists who ask awkward questions. He did it on March the 25th. He did it again on April the 4th. Is there not a danger that this could A, give Congress a bad name, and B, put journalists off?
Actually, Karan, while I don't endorse or condone what happened, I, to some extent, empathize with it, because given what has become of the Indian media, or large sections of the Indian media, over the past 8.5 years, it just reminds me of the words of late R.K. Mishra, who was the editor of The Patriot, independent member of the Rajya Sabha from Rajasthan. And while speaking on the Press Council Amendment Bill in 1974, he said, in India, it is not the freedom of the press. It is the freedom of the owner of the press, the delegated freedom enjoyed by the manager of the press, and one of the greatest traversities of India over the past 75 years is that we have not been able to create sustainable, independent, journalistic
all of that, Manish Tewari, I readily accept. However, what is likely to upset people and even put them off is not the fact that Rahul lost his cool and sang frog, which frankly a politician should never do. But one can understand that he's under an awful lot of pressure, and if he slipped up and made a mistake, people would forgive him. But it was the gloating when he said to that journalist, "Hawa nikal gayi," and that smirk on his face. That was what.
Well, I think you were being rather harsh on him.
Shouldn't he have apologized and closed the matter?
You're being rather harsh on him. I think someone who is going through the kind of persecution which he is going through currently deserves a little bit of magnanimity and deserves.
What about just a simple apology? I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I didn't mean what I said. That's all. Instead, what he said was the opposite. Gandhi's never apologized, as if it was almost a point of principle with him. Here was a moment when apology would have made him a bigger, better man and respect for him would have gone up?
Well, Karan, I don't think I'm going to enter this particular arena for the simple reason that our own experiences, for example, it's not that we couldn't have resorted to the same tactics which have been resorted to over the past 8.5 years. But let me tell you, and we'll end with this, when I became Minister for Information and Broadcasting, I asked former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, I said, what is my remit? And he told me that your relationship with the media has to be an essay in persuasion and not an essay in coercion.
I think once again, very obliquely and cleverly, and I have to say you're a great diplomat, you've answered my question. Your remit as Minister of I&B has to be an essay in persuasion, not coercion. And I think it's pretty clear what Rahul Gandhi was doing. Hawa nikal gayi.
Well, I think you're being very
but I won't embarrass you.
You're being very unmagnanimous.
I won't embarrass you by
you're
pushing
being very
that point forward.
unmagnanimous.
At a moment when you're laughing and you're seeing the point, I thank you for this interview.
Thank you
very much indeed.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.